we know that the public largely supports reducing emissions, cleaning up our environment. Of course we do. That's a really important aim. And this government has done a huge amount towards that. And I think we've actually reduced our emissions in this country by about half since 1990. But we must have a conversation about the cost of this, because I do agree with the Home Secretary. We can't bankrupt our own nation and make our own poor poorer in order to reduce emissions a little bit when China are massively expanding their emissions all the time. So just to put this in context, the UK produces about 1% of global emissions every year. China produces 28%. And they're building 100 new coal power stations every year. So rushing to net zero at any cost is a bit like having a tiny leak in one end of your roof and a gaping hole in the other, and putting all your effort into fixing the tiny leak while the big hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's pointless. And actually, we need to recognise that, yes, climate change is a challenge and a threat to the world, but China potentially is an even bigger one. And if we weaken our economy, as many other European countries have done, like Germany, for example, by going towards net zero too quickly, then actually China becomes an even bigger threat. So it's just not pragmatic. It's not clever. We do need to have a conversation about how we do this sensibly.
Do you think, Miriam, being absolutely honest, if you hadn't won in Uxbridge, you wouldn't be doing this? This is a kind of Uxbridge reaction. Oh, hang on a second. There's a glimmer of hope. We've been 13, 14 years in power. We're getting absolutely tonked in the polls. There is no hope for us. Oh, there's a glimmer of hope that this might be the wedge issue for the election.
Well, that is possible. But there are a large number of us in the party that have been pushing for some time to slow down on these policies, to reconsider the petrol ban. And, you know, we live in a democracy. When people vote and they vote for something, it's right for political leaders to say, well, actually, hang on a minute, maybe that is more popular than I thought. That is part of responding to the public, isn't it? And of course, you know, political parties want votes, especially when there's a year out. But it is, you know, if people are going to vote for something, it means that they want it. And so therefore, politicians should take notice. But I think, you know, one of the things that's missed in this debate is the impact of these policies on poorer members of the population. And the petrol car ban is a really interesting one. If you can afford a new electric vehicle, if you can afford solar panels, then, you know, they're a great option for you. And I can absolutely understand why you would support the rush to net zero. But think about young people buying their first car. My first car cost me £600. I couldn't have got to work without it. But now the second-hand car market is running so hot because of the impending ban that young people just can't afford to buy a car. So how are they supposed to get to work and training? They've already been priced out of the housing market. Is it fair to price them out of owning a car? And those are the conversations we should have. We should also be realistic about how sensible some of our policies are, because if we only count emissions in this country, we could actually be increasing them across the world. So steel policy is an example. We import loads of steel, dirty steel from China, while our own much greener steel industry is dying. That's having a negative overall impact on global emissions, but we can say we're getting closer to net zero. That's not sensible. We do need to have a discussion.